Okay, gentlemen, Erev Shabbat Shalom.
Been here, bro.
There's a great story. At one time, Rabbi Yitzchak David Grossman. I haven't told the Rabbi Grossman story in a long time. Rabbi Grossman and Rabbi Pesach Kron, right, the famed Magid. They were on a plane ride together, flying from either from Israel to Miami, from New York to Miami, and they're going to raise money for a Migdal Or, which is Rabbi Grossman's orphanage home in Yeshiva and Kollel, city that he built in Migdal HaEmek. So as he's riding on the airplane, Rabbi Grossman, he has his head back and he's humming some sort of tune to himself, and the stewardess, she becomes interested in the rabbi, not romantically, just interested. Hey, what is the rabbi doing? So she goes up to Rabbi Kron and she goes, "Excuse me, who's that rabbi over there?" And he says, "Well, you don't know?" He goes, "That's the famous disco rabbi from Israel. His name is Rabbi Yitzchak David Grossman." And she says, "Do you think Rabbi Grossman would mind if I asked him a question?" And he says, "No, go ahead. I'm sure he wouldn't mind." So she goes over to him and she says, "Are you Rabbi Grossman?" He says, "Yes." He goes, "Can I ask you a question?" He says, "Yes." She says, I'm Jewish." He goes, my name is Miriam, and I don't really practice Judaism. He goes, "But I wanted to for a long time. I really want to start becoming more Jewish." She says, "Do you have any advice for me to do something that makes me more Jewish?" So Rabbi Grossman thinks. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You see how this rabbi and I, Rabbi Kron and I, you see how we order the special meals, the kosher meals?" She goes, "Yes." He goes, "If you want to start doing that, that's going to make you more Jewish." And she says, "Well, you mean to tell me that those packaged foods that we warm up in the microwave with the double taping with all those stickers, you mean to tell me that's kosher?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, I always thought it was just some special, diet or vegetarian. I had no idea that it was called kosher." He goes, "Yeah, it's called kosher." So she thinks for a minute. She goes, "Okay, no problem. I'm going to start ordering for myself the kosher meals. But can you do me a favor, Rabbi? Could you explain to me what kosher means?" And for the first time, the rabbi said to himself, how in the world do you explain the word kosher to somebody who doesn't know? A lot of times the people, they have, if a person's growing up without a clue, so he thinks, if he knows, Jewish communities here and there, he might think that something with the kosher sign might be kosher. That's what makes it kosher. If you see a big OU on it, you think it's kosher. I was talking one time to the president of the OU. I think he was president from 2004, 2011. His name is Mr. Steven Savitsky. And Mr. Savitsky, one time, he was also an entrepreneur. And at the time that he was president of the OU, he was flying to Los Angeles. From New York, he was flying to Los Angeles for a business meeting. And as he's there, he's driving on the streets of LA, and he's in a private neighborhood. And as he's driving, he sees these two kids with kippot, and they have tzitzit hanging out, and they have a lemonade stand on the front of their lawn. And he thought, wow, he goes, these kids are young entrepreneurs, I'm going to go support them. So he gets out of his car in order to buy a cup of lemonade. And he saw two signs on the lemonade stand. One side said lemonade, $1, and the other side there was a big OU signal. So of course, this OU certification was unauthorized because no one asked him for permission. But he gets there and he says, he goes, "Boys," he goes, "What's this sign? What's this O with the U inside?" And they're like, "What do you mean? You don't know what it is?" He goes, "No, I don't know." He goes, "Well, this means our lemonade is kosher." They tell him. And he goes, "Well, I'm from New York." He goes, "Well, we don't trust anybody." He goes, how am I supposed to trust you that this big sign means that it's kosher?" And the kids look at him, they say, "Mister, if you can't trust the OU, you can't trust anybody." That's the story that they told him. So you guys, that people understand that when there's a big OU sign, they think it's kosher, but they don't even know what it means. So this Jewish lady who was never a practicing Jew before, she comes to Rabbi Grossman and she says, "I'm willing to take about a mess of kosher, but what does kosher mean?" How in the world are you supposed to explain the concept of kosher to a woman or to a person who doesn't understand the concept? So Rabbi Grossman thought for a minute, and he looks at her and he goes, "You know cars?" She goes, "Yeah, of course I know cars." And he says, "Do you know the Ford company?" "I know the Ford company." He goes, "You know the Ford company, they make two different types of engines. They have for the smaller, the four-door sedans and the SUVs, they have a regular engine, it takes regular gasoline." He goes, "But sometimes for their trucks, for the F-150, the F-450, the big towing capacity, you need a different type of engine. You need different type of gas. That gas is called diesel. You need a diesel engine." He goes, "The different cars, depending on what their job is, That's what type of gas that they need. And if you put regular gasoline in a diesel engine, what's going to happen to the engine? It's going to kill it. It's going to destroy it. He goes, the same thing when it comes to the world, he says. You see, God is the creator of the world, right? The world is his car company. And he created two different types of cars, two different types of people. He goes, you have the Jewish people and you have the non-Jews. He goes, the non-Jews, they don't need any special gasoline. He goes, for them, God created them to put them in this world in order to have a mission. That mission is to develop the physical world and to take care of it and to run it. He goes, for them, any type of gas you put inside, whether it's the Supreme, whether it's the Premium, or whether it's the regular, they handle it. And for them, it's just fine. For them, that type of gas works. He goes, but for the Jew has a completely different mission. He goes, our mission is more on a spiritual plane. He goes, our mission is we need to sanctify God's name and to be ambassadors of the religion called Judaism. He goes, for that, you can't just put in any regular gasoline. You need special diesel fuel. And if you put in a non-diesel fuel into a diesel engine, you're going to destroy it. He goes, same thing with the Jew. He goes, this food that we have, they'll go in, they can eat whatever food they want. It doesn't make a difference. It's all type of gas their engines accept. Goes, but for the Jew, he says, we need special type of food, special type of diet. That's the diesel diet, and that's what kosher food means. It's a great explanation. And she was intrigued, and she says, listen, I live in Miami. Do you have anybody that I could be in touch with? He happened to have a brother-in-law living in there, and today this woman is a full practicing Jew. It's a gorgeous story, but Rabbi Grossman's point was in order to say that the Jewish makeup, by the neshama and the soul and the body of a Jew, we run on kosher food because kosher food has been a part of our genetic makeup from the beginning of time. You know, there's a sefer called Nachal Eshkol. Nachal Eshkol brings a story from Rabbi Yaakov Emden. He says that one time, because there were two Jews, we called them Reuven and Shimon. Reuven and Shimon, they were on a ship that was at sea, and all of a sudden the ship, there was a big storm. And it was possible the ship was about to capsize. So the captain of the ship decided to revert its course and decided to go to Spain in order to take a break from the sea, from the voyage. And at that time, this was right after the Spanish Inquisition. So to be a Jew in Spain was a very dangerous thing, especially if you were a practicing Jew. You know, it was capital punishment if you were a practicing Jew in Spain. So these two Jews, they get off the boat and they say to themselves, "What are we going to do? How are we going to get food? Where are we going to stay? We have no idea. We can't practice Jewish religion outright because God forbid we're going to get killed." So these two different families, they adopt these two Jewish men from the boat. One guy, Reuven, goes to one house and Shimon goes to another house. And they're there for the next couple of weeks until they recover from their voyage and they can go on their way. So of course the hosts, they give Reuven, Shimon anything they eat, they drinking, food, lodgings, everything. And at the end of the trip, the host calls over to Reuven. He goes, you're gonna depart now. He goes, but I want to tell you a secret. He goes, I know that you're Jewish. He goes, but you don't have to worry. He says, I'm on Morano. Because what's Moranos, Rabotai? Moranos were the Jews that stayed in Spain that were Christian on the outside but practiced Judaism on the inside. He goes, I'm a Morano. He goes, and I have a special slaughterhouse in my basement where I practice Judaism on the strictest level, shechita on the strictest level. Because so every single time I put meat on the table, I shechted the cow myself according to the strictest standards. Anytime you stayed in my house, you ate 100,000% Bet Yosef, halak, meat, you had no issues. And Reuven was very happy. The fact the entire time he was eating kosher. He goes, but Shimon, his friend that stayed at another guy's house, he wasn't so lucky. And Shimon, he had no choice because if he would show that he's not eating, they would suspect him as being a Jew and they would have killed him. So Shimon, under the force of maybe pikuach nefesh, he had to eat the non-kosher meat, he had to eat the dairy and meat, he had to eat the terifot, he had no choice. So when they met each other, before they got back on the boat, they were telling each other stories. And Reuben said, you're not going to believe it. He goes, the entire time I was eating kosher. And Shimon said, how come I didn't get so lucky? So after they got to their places, they go to the rabbi and they ask him, they say, Rabbi, it's not fair. He goes, Reuven, he got very lucky. He was staying by Moranos. He ate kosher the whole time. He goes, but me, I didn't. I was forced to eat non-kosher. Why is that so? And the rabbi looked at me, he says, be honest. He goes, was there any time in your life when you were not makpid on kashrut? Was there any time in your life when you were a little lenient or very lax when it came to keeping kosher? He goes, yeah, one time. He goes, I was going on a hiking trip. I was with my friends. We were in the forest. And we came to some, woodsman's house. And over there, he put a platter, like a charcuterie board for us that had cheese, that had bread, that had wine, that had crackers. And it wasn't kosher. He goes, but my ta'aba, my lust was so strong, I decided to eat from it anyway. He goes, therefore, I ate it. So The rabbi said that's the reason. Because the reason why Hashem did not perform a miracle on your behalf, the reason why Hashem didn't make you stay with the Marana like your friend did, is because since you showed that you were lenient, since you compromised one time in your life when it came to the kashrut, that's why God didn't perform a miracle on your behalf. Because, oh, but your friend Reuven, who kept his entire life on the strictest standards, that's why Hashem made a miracle. So therefore, kosher and Judaism, the two go hand in hand. This week's parasha is Re'eh. Parashat Shavua, obviously, it talks about kosher, hence the topic. And we all know that the kosher signs for an animal are Rabotai, chewing its cud, and split hooves. And the kosher sign for a fish, the Torah tells us in this week's parasha, is fins and scales. Sanapia b'kaskeset. On a regular explanation why God doesn't want to eat us, why God doesn't want us to eat non-kosher animals, is because God knows in the way He created the world is that certain animals, they have bad character. And the Ramban famously comes along, the Ramban says, you are what you eat. So therefore, if a person eats animals that are non-kosher, there's a concept that their negative character will be enveloped in you. So therefore, God says don't eat the non-kosher animals because they have certain bad character traits. But nonetheless, God gave us these certain signs. Whether it's the split hooves and the chewing its cud, or whether it's the fins and scales, we have to follow and abide by this law. But the rabbis tell us that everything in the Torah is there to teach us a lesson. Even halacha is there that we should learn something from it. And the question is, gentlemen, what is the lesson? What is the musar? What is the message of God telling us that an animal has to have split hooves and the animal must chew its cud? What is the lesson of fins and scales? Why are God giving us these signs and telling us you must abide by these rules? What is the lesson for us? So there's a famous Chizkuni. The Chizkuni writes in later parasha, I think it's parasha Kitizeh in 2 weeks, there's a halacha that writes, Lo tacharosh bishor Hamor yahdav. What does that mean? That any time a person has a field and he wants to plow his field, he shall not plow the field using a hamor, which is a donkey, and a ox and a cow together. You cannot do that. You cannot crossbreed these animals to use it as you're plowing for your field. Why not? Why can't you use a crossbreed of a shor and a hamor? So I'll tell you first the Kabbalistic view. The Kabbalistic view is, in the realm of Kabbalah, you should know that Kabbalistically you have Esav and you have Ishmael. And these two negative forces, these two evil nations, they're represented by certain animals. As the Zohar calls them, Ishmael and Esav, there was called Klipat Shor and Klipat Hamor. Don't get too confused. Whatever this means, one day when you're going to be by the shore of a Kabbalist, he'll tell you these things, and once you hear, you're going to say, oh yeah, I remember one time Rabbi Rubinoff was talking about Klipat Shor v'Hamor, but take it as face value. The Zohar says that Esav and Ishmael, they represented by the Klipa, the husk, or the skin of the shell of the shore and the Hamor. These two nations are Shor v'Hamor. Therefore, God forbid, anytime a person takes these two animals, the donkey and the ox, and he uses them to plow his field together, what is he essentially doing? He's creating what's called a symbolic gesture. In Hebrew, you call it a po'el hamdimyon. You're creating a symbolic gesture. Once you put the shor v'hamor together, you are, so to speak, in essence, putting together Yishmael and Esav, and you're using them to plow your field. Therefore, we never want these two guys to team up. We want to keep it as separate as possible, the Christians and the Muslims, because if they ever make a partnership together, they're going to wipe out the Jews. Therefore, in order to keep that unison, the unification of Esav and Ishmael together, we stay away from shor v'hamor. That is a regular explanation of why the Torah doesn't want us to plow our fields using a combination of shor v'hamor. That is a Kabbalistic view. But al pi apeshat, regular understanding. Why does the Torah not want us to plow shor v'hamor yachdav? Listen to what the Chizkuni writes. He says, well, you see, the Torah just told us that the shor, one of his qualities of being kosher, is that he chooses cud. What does that mean? That means basically when he eats lunch or eats breakfast or eats dinner, what does he do? He chews on the food and then he swallows it. And after he swallows it, right, hope everybody had dinner, they regurgitate, they throw up in their mouths, they vomit in their mouths again, and they continue chewing that food, and they chew it, then they swallow it, and they keep on doing it. They keep on chewing, swallowing, throwing up, chewing, swallowing, throwing up. This is a process that goes over and over again. So says the Chizkuni, imagine for 1 second, the shor and the hamor, they both had lunch together. Both ate together, everything was fine, they're both full. All of a sudden you attach them to themselves and they go out to plow the field. Now the donkey, he doesn't regurgitate. The donkey doesn't chew its cud. The donkey doesn't throw up in his mouth and continue chewing and swallow again. But the shor does, but the ox does. All of a sudden, halfway through their job, the donkey's going to look over the shor, he's going to look over the ox, and he's noticing that the ox is chewing. He's chewing and he's chewing and he's swallowing. And the hamor, you see, he has the brain of a hamor. He doesn't understand the fact that the cow, one of his kosher signs is the fact that he regurgitates and he continues chewing. He's chewing its cud. The hamor's going to think that the cow got a second lunch and he didn't. Therefore, in order not to cause tsar bale hayim, in order not to bring pain on to the animal, the Torah says, do not plow a shore and a hamor together, lest the hamor think that the cow got a dinner or an extra piece of food instead of him. That's what the Cheskuni says. Wonderful explanation. But nonetheless, based on the Cheskuni, Rabutai, the rabbis, they want to extrapolate the following idea. That's what a cow represents. This whole thing of chewing his cud, this whole thing of chewing food, swallowing it, throwing it back again, chewing it, swallowing again, the whole thing is really metaphoric. The whole thing is really a lesson for us to learn. And what's the lesson of chewing on something and letting it linger in your mouth? The lesson is as the rabbis put it, it's really a metaphor for being able to live in the moment and to savor it. The attribute of chewing its cud means to allow the passion and excitement of the moment to last as long as possible. Rabbi, this is a tremendous lesson. Because as human beings, and this is the psychology of human beings, we get bored of things very fast. You know, thank God I have a big zechut. I teach Chatanim all the time. And one of my introductions that I give them before I teach them Hilchot Nida, which is all the laws of Harachakot and how you have to keep away from your wife and the time that she's unavailable to you, I always give them the following introduction. And I say, Rabotai, boys, I say, you might think that this is an annoying halacha. It's annoying the fact that you got married to be married, and all of a sudden, 11 or 12 days out of the month, you're basically living with a roommate, not with a wife. And a person says, I got married to get married. It's not fair. Why can't I be able to fill in the blank with my wife anytime I want? It's not fair. And I tell him, you should know. I said, within the laws of Hilchot Nida, within the laws of Harachakot, it's built-in marriage therapy. And I tell them why. I said, because, like I just told you before, people get bored of things very fast. We get bored of our phones fast. We get bored of our cars fast. We get bored of our clothing fast. We get bored very fast. And the big companies that sell things, the big time retailers, they're banking on the fact that the American consumer would want a new thing as often as he can. I always got a big kick out of it. My parents are from Grey Neck. And we had a big mall that was right next to our house called Americana Manhasset. It's a huge luxury mall. And one of the buildings that they have in Americana Manhasset is called the Apple Store. And I loved it that every single year around September time, Apple always releases a brand new phone. And every single year in and year out, every day that it's released, you have the line outside the door, wrapping around the block, all to what? To buy the new phone. And double type between me and you, we all have iPhones, we all have new phones. How often is the changes that they make a colossal change? To be honest, if you really ask me, they haven't really changed the iPhone since like the iPhone X. They haven't, it's been years, it's been maybe since 2008. They never really changed it. It's been 20 some odd years when the phone has kind of really stayed the same. Maybe, they add Face ID. Yeah, maybe they tweak the camera, they make it a little better. So why are people so obsessed? Why are Americans and Chinese and everybody around the world so obsessed with every year getting the new iPhone? Rabbi, what is Peshat? Peshat is that after a year with being within one item, they cannot stand this thing after a year. After a year, they can't look at it anymore. I need something new. I need to renew it. Otherwise, they get bored. And that's the way it is. That's why leasing companies are so big, because they know they're banking on the fact that the American consumer, he cannot stand being in the same car for 24 months. Or the same car for 36 months. I need to renew. I need to always get the new item. I need to get the new car. Jews, we love hadashot. We love new items. What's going to be one day, Rabotai, where the person that you're sleeping next to, where the person that you spent your life with, you turn over one day and you look at her and you say, I'm tired of the same face every single day. What's going to be? And by Rabotai, you're laughing, but it happens. It happens all the time where a person says, I'm living with the same person, whether she's saying it on you, you're saying it on her, you're saying it on each other. What's going to be when you look at each other, you say, I'm sick of you already. Ma'yeh. And by the way, this is not only a Jewish thing. Even secular marriage therapists, even non-Jewish marriage therapists, the moment a couple comes into therapy and they say we cannot stand each other anymore, the first thing the therapist will recommend is take a break. Take a break from each other. You go live upstairs, you go live down the block, go away from each other just for a little bit of time in order to re-spark that relationship. But see, by Jews, we're very lucky because we have Chot Nidah, we have Harachakot. And 11 months out of the year, we say to each other, we're going to stay away. Not because I hate you, lehefech, it's because I love you. And because I love you, because I always want to savor our relationship, I'm going to make sure that 11 days out of the month, you're going to be off limits for me in order for our relationship to remain very strong. Imagine for 1 second you work for a company. And you work for a company, your boss tells you, you can get any car you want on the company. Not only that, but also pay for your gas. You say you get the best car and you're driving it for 2 weeks and you're the happiest man alive. All of a sudden, after 2 weeks, your boss tells you, you remember the car that I told you to get? Give it back to me. Give it back to you. How am I supposed to get to work? I don't care. Take a bus, walk, take a bike. I don't care. So for 2 weeks, all you're doing is taking the bus, metro card, bicycle, you're walking to work. It's freezing, it's hot, it's cold, it's raining, it's snowing. It doesn't matter, you're walking to work. All of a sudden, after 2 weeks, your boss says, remember that car that I told you about? Here's the car back. Oh my God, the moment you get back inside that car, you're touching the wheel and you're touching, I can't believe I missed these leather seats. You're playing with the radio. Yishtabach Shemo, I got my car back. It's funny, but that's exactly what the Jewish relationship is supposed to be. You see, in Judaism, we don't believe in anniversaries once a year. We believe in anniversaries once a month. So therefore, the moment that you're able to rekindle that relationship at the end of that 11-day period, you're super happy because you got back that thing. So therefore, the law is there not to make you suffer, I explained to the people, but the law is there in order for you to be happy. The law is there in order for the human psychology not to break down and say, I'm so sick and tired of this. And that's what chewing its cud represents. You see, when the cow takes that food, and he chews it, then he chews it, and he chews it, then he swallows it, and then he regurgitates it. He's throwing it back in his mouth, and he's chewing it. That's what chewing its cud represents. It represents a person who wants to savor the moment, who wants to live in the moment. It's the ability to look at what you have, and even though it's old, and even though it's frail, you need to look at that item and you need to say, I still love it. That's what chewing its cud represents. It's a fascinating piece of musar. But that's exactly what swallowing and throwing up and swallowing again, it's saying that don't swallow the things in your life that you have. Don't swallow your marriage, Abutai. Don't swallow your car. Don't swallow your house. Don't swallow your toys and gadgets. God wants you to be happy with these things in order to rekindle that relationship. In order to be happy with what you have, once in a while, you got to make sure to just savor the moment and live in the moment. I saw earlier today from the Rabbi in Lubavitch. He says there's many things you can learn from children, many things. But he quotes 5 of them. And he says, number 1, I have it written down. He goes, number 1, if a child gets knocked down, they keep on trying to get back up, which is a great lesson, by the way. You see, every time you have a child that's trying to walk, right? After the child tries to walk a couple of steps and falls down, it's never going to give up on walking. No, the child gets back up, the child keeps on walking. With adults, unfortunately, it's not like that. With adults, sometimes we get knocked down, we get despondent, we get irritated, we get depressed, and we don't want to try anymore. Child is not like that. A child keeps on going no matter how many times it's failed. Number 2, the child doesn't hold grudges, which is also amazing. You could have 2 kids, they could be at each other's throats all day. But when they go to sleep, what happens? They're holding hands together. I have that with my twins. They're fighting all the time. Give me the toy, give me this, give me that, give me money, you owe me money, you got me the snack, you took away the snack. But if something happens between them, they're long life partners forever. And they know that. Because why? Even forget about siblings. Even within school themselves. Kids can be fighting all day. But kids do not hold grudges. Adults, on the other hand, you do something to us, we'll remember it for the next 40 years. The kids are not like that at all. Kids, they're very easy to let go. Number 3, they want to do things themselves, which is also a very powerful character trait. The child, if you offer one of my kids to tie their shoes for you, no, Abba, I'm doing it by myself. You need help showering? No, Abba, I'll do it by myself. As adults, we like to delegate. We like to give things away. Maybe that guy will do, maybe that guy will do, just to be lazy. But children, no matter what it is, they're sticking to what they believe that they could do. A child, number 4, says the Rebbe Lubavitch, will always stop eating when he's full, which is also a tremendous thing. By Jews, you don't have that. You're at the smorgasbord, you're at the hotel, you're at the restaurant, you're ordering 25 appetizers, you're taking from that over here, a little bit over there, a little bit. Even if you're full, you're going to continue eating. But children, you try to feed a child a spoon of food, one more spoon over his capacity, he won't open his mouth. A child knows how to control his diet. And finally, says the Rabbi Lubavitch, which is the lesson of the day the children, they love having fun with the same thing over and over again. Abba, let's do it again. Abba, read me that book again. Abba, let me jump on your shoulders again and again and again. Why? Because for them, they don't have that, it gets old. For them, they're so excited just to be there. And that's exactly what chewing its cud means. It means that just to savor the moment, to be in there, to just go over it over and over, not to let these things grow sour. Because in life, you're right, maybe with an iPhone or maybe with a car, it's not so bad to get a new one every couple of years. But if this happens in real relationships, like the relationship of a marriage, God forbid that your relationship is going to be destroyed. It's considered rotten from the core. I thought that was a tremendous lesson. But he continues. And he says we can learn a similar lesson to the fish in the scales, right? To the kaskasim and the sinapir, right? Which is the fish and the fins and the scales. Hazak. The Gemara there's a famous Gemara on Daf Nun Aleph, and the Gemara says that any animal, any marine life, any fish that has scales, it automatically has fins. That's what the Gemara says, and it's fascinating because if you ever go to Esha Torah, which is like the center of the world from proving Judaism and to say how authentic the Torah is, this Gemara is one of Esha Torah's biggest proof that Judaism is authentic. Why? Because they made a statement. The rabbis of the Gemara made a statement over 2,000 years ago, and they said a very bold statement without having any computers, without swimming with animals. They said that any animal that has scales, it's guaranteed to have fins. Now, how are they supposed to know that? Unless they know the secrets of the world, how else are they supposed to know that? And today, on today's date, where they discovered over 2 million species of aquatic life, of marine life, they have yet to discover an animal that has scales with no fins. It's a tremendous statement that they made, and this is one of the biggest proof of the authenticity of Torah Sheba'al Peh, at least. Oh, Hazaku Baruch. So the Gemara's question is, well, I don't get it. If you want to tell me that every single animal that has scales has fins, so why say it at all? Just tell me it has scales, and automatically I'm going to know that once it has scales, it has fins. Why to throw in the extra word fins also if it's automatic? It's kind of like, if you have a guy that's very close with his wife, and anywhere he goes, you know his wife is going to be there. I don't have to invite his wife because it's automatic. Once I invite him, I know he's bringing his wife. So therefore, if you're inviting him and there's a wedding invitation that says, to Mr. and Mrs. David Rubinoff, you don't have to write Mrs. because she's always coming with me. So why write Mrs. if she's always there? Why write fins if the fins are automatically there, covered under the scales? So the Gemara gives us an answer. What does the Gemara say? Lahagdil Torah lahadira. That's what the Gemara's simple answer is, because they just want us to learn more. That's it. If you tell me scales without fins, even though it's automatic, so I wouldn't learn as much. I wouldn't analyze as much. Oh, now that you told me it's also scales and it's fins, now I can write a book about it. Now I can have more science. I can have pictures. So therefore, lahagdil Torah lahadira. That's a simple interpretation. But says Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau, former chief rabbi of Israel, and he says an unbelievable pshat. He says again, the whole thing is a metaphor. And he says, Jews throughout history were always compared to fish. Always, Jews and fish are always synonymous with each other. How do we know? Famous Gemara with Rabbi Akiva. What happened? In the times of the Romans. Exactly. Times of the Romans, they said, no learning Torah. Rabbi Akiva, he did it anyway. He taught Torah in public. So the guy came up to him and said, Rabbi Akiva, how could you teach Torah in public? Are you not afraid about what the Romans are going to do to you? What does Rabbi Akiva answer? What was his famous answer? I'll tell you a mashal. He goes, one time there was a fish, and the fish was swimming inside the water, and all of a sudden a fox came to him. The fox said, dear fish, He goes, what are you doing inside the water? He goes, aren't you afraid of the fishermen? Aren't you afraid about the polar bears? Aren't you afraid about the dangerous habitat in which you are on? How about you just jump onto dry land, and me and you are going to live like best friends on dry land. And the fish looks at the fox, and the fish says, they call you the smartest of all the animals? And what if in our natural habitat in the water, where it's the air in which we breathe, kach, and we're still in danger from the hunters, from the fishermen, from the polar bears, in our natural habitat we're still in danger. Kosher, kal v'chomer, if we leave our natural habitat, if we come out of the water, we go on dry land, which we're not supposed to be, all the more so are we going to be in danger. That's what the fish tells the fox. Says Rabbi Akiva, that's the mashal. The nimshal is, the Jews and the fish are synonymous. And our natural habitat Where we belong is in a place that we learn Torah. That is the air in which we breathe. So therefore, if we're in danger in our natural habitat, where we're supposed to be learning Torah, if we're in danger, or the more so if we stop even for a second, where we're taken out of where we're supposed to be, or the more so are we going to be in danger. That's the mashal that Rabbi Akiva says. So even a day without learning is a day without oxygen. And therefore, your person could say, well, I go many, many days, or many, many weeks, or many months, or God forbid, even many years, without even opening a book or attending a class, and I breathe just fine. You're right, you might breathe just fine just for a while, but slowly but surely, as age takes over, you're going to see your oxygen levels, they're going to drop, and they're going to drop very fast. Therefore, says Rabbi Akiva, our natural habitat is Torah, and therefore fish and human beings are synonymous. Says Rabbi Lau, there's an old age debate, Rabotai. And the old age debate is, what is it better for a Jew to do? Is it better for a Jew, or Jews in general, to kind of seclude themselves, build Jewish ghettos, remain in the same neighborhoods, and never kind of mingle with the Goyim? Or is it more appropriate for a Jew to kind of go ahead and spread the light of Torah, etc., etc.? What's better to do? Because I can argue both sides have pluses and minuses. To be in a tight-knit community, that's amazing. Why? Because it's only you. It's only you. You can keep out all foreign ideas. You can keep out all bad influences. And it's just you. Right? I guess that is the general idea behind a lot of these places in Borough Park and Williamsburg. The Hasidim, they want to remain very tight. They're so tight that some of these guys, they can't even speak English. They're very reserved. They don't need to. The guy down the block, he's a Hasid, he's a Satmar Jew. The yeshivas, they speak Yiddish. The bus drivers are Hasidish. Right? The garbage men are Hasidish. Everybody is Hasidish. Therefore, there's no reason for us even to learn how to speak English because we're very tight-knit. But at the same time, we have a moral obligation to go out and tell the world what a Jew is. Like Rabbi Grossman says, our job is to be ambassadors of our religion and to tell the people what a Jew is all about. So therefore, what is more proper, Rabotai? Is it proper for a Jew to go out or to keep to himself? Right? I guess the two characters in history we learned this from is Noach and Abraham. Noach was a guy that only kept to himself, hence he only took his family on the boat. He didn't care about anybody else. But Abraham was the type of guy who went out and taught monotheism and taught everybody about being Jewish. So what is proper? Says Rabbi Lau, what's proper is both. Yeah, at a certain point, you have to know that you have to keep to yourself in order to minimize the influence of the outside world. But once a person is strong enough, it's going to be his responsibility to go out and spread the light of Judaism. Says Rabbi Lau, that is represented by the fish. Again, the fish and the Jew are synonymous. It's one and the same. And what is the two kosher signs that the fish has? He has the scales and he has the fins. The scales, what is the job of scale? It looks like his armor. Ever imagine, picture a fish for a second. His scales are like the protective layer of skin that he has in order to say, I'm right now keeping to myself. The scale is my shield. The scale is my magen to keep all outside influences out. But eventually, after your scale is strong enough, you have to say, now I want to grow myself some fins. I'm going to grow myself some fins and I'm going to swim out to the world and I want to prove to the world what kind of good people the Jews are. So yes, says Rabbi Lau, when the Gemara says, why mention fins if there's scales? The Gemara's answer was, Lagdil Torah ul Hadira. Said Rabbi Lau, exactly what he's saying is the same answer as the Gemara. Our job is to grow in Torah, to grow in Jewish education. Our job is to develop ourselves as long-lasting, moralic Jews. But at the same time, after we keep our morals, it's our job to go out and to swim, Lagdil Torah ul Hadira, to spread it everywhere, to prove to the world what a Jew really is. So even though, yes, you have to go out, you have to be social, you have to mingle, you have to talk to people, you have to prove to the world what a Jew is, but at the same time, you must keep your moral ethic. It's late. I'm going to end with one last story. This story is a world-famous story, but just recently I actually found out who the rabbi behind the story was. The rabbi's name was Rabbi Marvin Heir, H-E-I-R, a rabbi in Vancouver. And he was, a quick Google search will tell you, he was one of the top, maybe 10 influential rabbis in America. Very, very famous guy. And like I said, he was the rabbi of Vancouver. And one day, he was invited to the Palace of England. The Queen was hosting a seudah, and she was inviting all the hierarchy, all the priests and all the Muslims and all the Jews that were in high positions. And the invite was to take place at the palace. And Rabbi Heir was invited. And before he goes, he calls the organizer of the event. He goes, listen, he goes, I have very strict kosher, conditions. He goes, I can't have the food you're having. I have to have special plates, special forks, special knives, or whatever it is. I have to have my own item. They said, no problem. We'll arrange everything for you and your wife. So he gets to the Seudah. He sits down in his seat. Everything is wrapped in plastic. He takes everything out. And he's the only guy that's eating on plastic, him and his wife. But what he didn't anticipate in this meal was that the queen, she wanted all the heads of state to mingle amongst each other. And the way it was supposed to be was the lights were supposed to flicker, kind of like a bell. That was the siman. And everybody would get up from their seat, go move somewhere else, so the seats don't stay the same the entire meal. In order to, imagine, Rabbi, you had a wedding. At the wedding, you're sitting next to the guy that you're stuck with that guy the entire Seudah. Well, what are the guys sitting next to you don't like? Can't just change seats. That's the seat that they gave you. But in order for everybody to get to know each other within the community, everybody's going to get up, switch tables, switch seats, so you get to talk to everybody. Now, for Rabbi Marvin, this was a problem. Why? Because the next seat doesn't have no kosher utensils, doesn't have kosher cutlery. What is he going to do? Everybody's getting up, switching seats, and they bring them new stuff. But there was no new stuff for him. So he's the only guy that was picking up his fork and knife and plate, and he was walking with his stuff to every single seat that he went to. Now, see, there were other Jews at this event, Jews that were not as strict as Rabbi Marvin. And there was one Jewish judge that happened to know the rabbi, but he was embarrassed. He's like, look at this rabbi's doing. He's making Jews look bad. So, because he didn't care about his cutlery. So therefore, Rabbi Marvin's walking, and these guys are pointing and laughing. After a while, the queen notices that this guy is picking up his forks and knives, and she says, hey, you know what is this guy doing? So she calls him over. And she asks him, what are you doing? Why are you picking up your forks and knives? There's plenty at the seats. So he explains the situation, he explains what kosher is, and little do you know, he's having a 20-minute conversation, private conversation with the queen. And this Jewish judge gets jealous. He goes, hey, listen, it's not fair that the guy was talking to her for such a long time. I also want to talk to her. So he goes up to the queen, and as they're talking, he says, Queen, ich bin Yid. I'm also Jewish. I'm also like this rabbi. And she says, yeah, you're also Jewish? How come you aren't carrying your plate and your fork and your knives around? And the guy understood right away. There's a lot of lessons you can learn from the story. But I think the main lesson is that, it's the job of Jews to kind of spread the light of Torah everywhere. That's our job, right? But at the same time, just because you're spreading, just because you find yourselves amongst Goyim, doesn't mean you have to compromise on your value. Doesn't mean you have to compromise on your moral, right? Rabbi Marvin knew that, I have to be amongst these people. I have to be amongst Jews, but about non-Jews. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to change who I am and start saying, listen, forget about kashrut, forget about cutlery, forget about all those things. You have to believe in what you believe in, and you have to make sure everybody knows it. And that's when the Goyim, they really respect us. So with that, we have two tremendous lessons. Someone's going to ask you on the street, what is this whole idea behind chewing its cud and having kosher fins and scales? You're going to say very simple. Chewing its cud is the lesson of to savor every moment. Don't let human psychology depict or run the way you're going to run your life. It's going to make you depressed. It's going to make you super unhappy looking at the things that we have and constantly complaining about it. You wish you had something else. Chewing its cud makes us realize to savor the moment, to really internalize what we have and be happy with it, even if it's old, to fall in love with again. And finally, fins and scales. The scales is our magen. The scales is our shield. To say that we have to be tight-knit, we have to really grow as people, but at the same time, fins in order to swim, to spread the light of Torah. Wishing all our members a Shabbat Shalom. Om Mevorach. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Matzah Kodesh 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 Kodesh